Welcome back to the Republic Brothers Podcast. I'm Mike, and he's Matt, and this is episode 17. Today is November 30th, 2025. We're talking about the controversial platform BrandArmy, the tragedy that took place this week with two National Guard members, Joe Biden's autopen, and the Venezuelan airspace. Let's get into it. All right, we are back after having a quiet Thanksgiving. Spent some time with the family, had some good food, watched some football. Now, we haven't recorded in 5 days. We usually record Wednesday, but we recorded Tuesday last week just to give us an extra day with the holiday. So there's been a ton in the news since we last recorded. So Matt, I want to kick things off with something I saw online a few days ago. I didn't even know this existed until a couple days ago. What I'm talking about is the subscription-based fan monetization platform called BrandArmy. For anyone who hasn't heard of it, it's basically a safe-for-work parallel to services like OnlyFans. Creators offer subscribers exclusive content like photos, videos, live streams, and direct chats for a fee. Now, I use the word safe for work loosely. I say that because this platform allows teens and child influencers starting at age 13 to create what's called junior accounts. Their policy says they need parent or guardian permission. But here's where the controversy is. Allowing kids under 18 to monetize content directly to adult subscribers opens the door for predators. Unwanted attention, lewd comments, and inappropriate private chats asking minors for custom content and asking to meet up. You can be 13 years old and post on this platform, but you have to be 18 or over to subscribe. The platform doesn't allow outright nudity, but they require a 50-50 balance in things like bikini content and risque photos. So basically, a 13-year-old can post a risque bikini photo as long as the next post is fully clothed. The restrictions on what people post are completely subjective. BrandArmy announced in April of 2025 that it's retiring the platform later this year. They're also getting rid of the underage accounts by the end of this year and redoing the platform for users 18 and over. To me, this is a day late and a dollar short. Junior accounts were only 5% of the platform, but that's still too high. What parent is letting their children use this kind of stuff? The whole idea screams abuse. So after all that, it's pretty obvious and clear that I would never let my kids do this. Matt, if you had kids, would you ever let them create a junior account on this site?
Absolutely not. I had never heard of this platform before you mentioned it to me a day or two ago. It sounds like a pedophile's dream.
Exactly.
As far as who I think would let their kids do this, there are plenty of parents out there with no morals who would see their kid as a way to make money. You see some of the tragedies in Hollywood with how messed up some of the child stars become. I have a very easy time believing there are parents all over the country that would monetize their kid to make their own life a little bit easier so they don't have to work as hard.
Oh, definitely. I think I saw that a lot of the accounts on there are like child models and like, child actors and things like that. They're the ones that are posting this stuff. But the fact that you can post on there at 13 years old, but in order to be a subscriber, you have to be over 18. So you can be 18, 30, 40, 70 years old, sending money to kids and then direct chatting with them and asking them for personalized content. And then you throw in the fact that you have guys on here asking for meetups with children and things like that. It just, the whole business model just sounds like a terrible idea.
I'm shocked we haven't heard of some lawsuit. As I said, it screams pedophile's dream to me. And if you are over the age of 18, you should not be looking at children. Period. If you are an adult, you should not, under any circumstances, be oohing and aahing over a child's photo.
Yeah, I still don't understand any of this. I actually saw this on a TikTok from the older millennial. He was talking about it, and I was watching his video, And I was like, there's no way this is real. There is no way this is real. So I looked it up, and sure as hell, it's real.
And I'll just say to anyone out there with a BrandArmy account, I think you're an idiot. If you have an OnlyFans account, I also think you're an idiot. Why are you wasting your money on that stuff? Go to the gym, work out, do something to better your life. Why send your money to people who don't care about you?
Yeah, they were supposed to be shutting the whole site down by the end of this year, but I think it got delayed. And so they've stopped accepting the junior accounts already. And all of the junior content creators have to be off the site by the end of this year. And this is just all from the backlash that the site has gotten over these junior accounts. And then they're going to be transitioning and basically coming up with a whole new platform that's for 18 plus. So basically, they're going to try and compete with OnlyFans, is what it sounds like to me. Like, they're going to get rid of all the children's accounts so that they can switch to something that is more competitive with OnlyFans. That's what I gather from what I read.
I would imagine some of that is also removing liabilities. Like I said earlier, this just screams to me like a liability.
Yeah, no doubt. Now that we got that out of the way, I want to bring up a little bit of sad news. Unfortunately, we have to talk about it, though. November 26, 2025, 2 National Guard members were shot in an ambush-style attack just blocks away from the White House. Sarah Beckstrom and Andrew Wolf were the 2 soldiers who were shot. Unfortunately, Sarah Beckstrom died from her injuries the next day. Andrew Wolf is still in critical condition. In reaction to the shooting, the federal government ordered a pause on new asylum decisions. So, Matt, what do we know about the shooter?
Well, it's come out in recent days that the shooter was known to be spiraling into mania and mental illness. A refugee group was warned that the shooting suspect was spiraling into mania. The New York Post reported that a leading national refugee agency was warned multiple times that the Afghan terror suspect was spiraling, and that spiral began in 2023. Despite this, and an alleged failure to maintain his mandated contact with state social services, he still managed to win asylum in April of this year. A community member wrote in 2024 that he was not functional as a person or father since March of 2023. And this community member said he feared that the suspect had become suicidal. During his manic episodes, he would reportedly leave in the family car and be gone sometimes for up to 2 weeks. When his wife was gone to visit relatives and he was left with the children, they would go to school in unwashed clothes and without having eaten well. The children's school raised concerns about his behavior as well, and the family faced eviction at one point in 2023 after not paying rent for months. We know the suspect worked with the CIA-backed Zero Unit in the Afghan army and was brought to the U.S. in 2021 under Operation Allies Welcome. Now, we don't know exactly why he did this, and if we do, we will certainly have another conversation about it. This is just another example of our immigration system being broken. Things like this will happen more often if we do not properly vet the people coming into this country. Reports would suggest that this suspect really struggled to assimilate to our culture and way of life, and he had a hard time holding down a job or committing to learning English. I believe we need to check and make sure the people coming in want to join our way of life, not bring their way of life here. If you import the third world into your country, you will start to become the third world. We can't lower our own standards to welcome these people in. That kind of reminds me of the case in Minnesota not long ago. A Somali group wrote to the judge asking for leniency in the sentencing because he was from Somalia and they have a different way of life. He raped a child. I don't care where you're from. You should know that's not an acceptable thing to do. It's an example that we need to vet the people that come here. I understand this individual shooting suspect helped the U.S., but we should have looked into whether or not he would join our way of life. That's the type of person we should try to prevent coming here.
Yeah, we keep coming back to this. Every time we have a shooting, it's some kind of mental illness. It sounds to me like the warning signs were there and they were just missed. They were overlooked. And it's really sad. I don't think we're ever really going to find an exact reason on why this guy did what he did, other than just something wasn't right in his head. Some screws were loose. But there has to be some way for us to get a better handle with our immigration. And when people are coming in here, we have to figure out a better way to determine if people should be allowed to stay here.
Well, yeah, and whether they can assimilate to our lifestyle should be a big factor. I know we don't have an official language as a nation, but it should be English. And if they have no desire to learn English, don't bring them into the country. I also think this points out another problem, and that's we need to stop making mental illness an excuse for committing crimes of any level. If they're mentally ill, we should provide them help. If they don't want the help, put them in jail until they want help.
Yeah, I agree. Every time there's a shooting, we hear, oh, they were suffering from mental illness, or they were this, or they were that. And it's just not a good excuse. It's not an excuse at all. There is help available, and if you don't want the help, then you shouldn't be out in the public just willy-nilly running around with the opportunity to go and hurt someone. But thoughts and prayers to Sarah Beckstrom's family and everyone that knew her, as well as Andrew Wolf. We really hope that he's able to pull through. Hopefully we will get some more information on this later and we can talk about it on the next podcast. Transitioning to our next topic, Matt, tell us about Trump and Joe Biden's autopen.
President Trump announced on Friday that he is canceling all orders signed by former President Joe Biden using an autopen. Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "Any document signed is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect. President Trump says the people operating the autopen did so illegally. Trump claims Joe Biden was not involved in the autopen process, and he will be brought up on charges of perjury if he claims he was. According to CBS News, Joe Biden signed 162 executive orders during his presidency. It is unclear how many were signed with the autopen. Now, Trump had already rescinded nearly 90 of Biden's executive orders, and in July, President Biden put out a statement saying that he made all the decisions during his presidency. Now, there's a couple different talking points here. It is worth noting that in 2005, President Bush's Justice Department said it was legal to use the autopen, and Trump himself has said he has used an autopen before, but only for unimportant papers. So all of the recent presidents have used an autopen. Now, it's also quite common for a president to revoke the executive orders that his predecessor signed, especially if the previous president was of the opposite party. Trump claims it. I would love to see some evidence that Joe Biden had nothing to do with signing some of the executive orders or some of the pardons, because that should be a massive scandal that might go uncovered by the media. If the Trump administration has that evidence, they need to release it. And I do think there is a real chance that that evidence exists. I have long thought Biden wasn't there mentally. I said it for the last 3 years of his presidency, but the left-leaning media always said he was fine. It was on the debate stage that they got exposed. Biden not being able to complete a sentence, even when he set all the rules for the debate, was the metaphorical pantsing that exposed the media's lies. It was clear Trump knew that day, too, that Biden wasn't up for it, and he agreed to all the rules that kind of went against him, and he just let Joe Biden do the talking so people would see nobody was home upstairs. I do think there is every chance that people in the Biden administration were doing some of the things on their own. We know Jill Biden was running some of the cabinet meetings. And we know they trotted Joe Biden back out there for the 2024 election because those people don't want to give up their power. We knew Joe Biden wasn't up for 4 more years. He was barely up at the start of his first term.
Yeah, if there is evidence of this, I would really love to see it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to see it because I feel like there's a heavy number of people that feel the same way, that think Joe Biden wasn't running the country for the last 3 years of his presidency. It was clear even before the debate that he wasn't all there. Like you said, Biden set all the rules for that debate, and then he went up on stage, and I'm not sure that he knew where he was. So Trump figured, I'll just show up and let him talk himself into a hole, which is exactly what happened. Because then it was not, a week or two later that they just said, oh, he's out of here, he's moving on, and Kamala is running for president now.
Well, yeah, all of the big money donors in the Democrat Party said they weren't giving the party any more money until they got a better candidate. The writing was on the wall. Trump wanted Biden to be the nominee because Trump knew it would be an easy win. Switching the candidate would make things more difficult, and his campaign would have to pivot. I find it quite ironic that the side that's out here shouting about no kings and he's destroying democracy is the side that also threw the nominee out who got all the votes and installed their own candidate.
Yeah, they fail to see the irony behind that. I hope there is evidence, and I hope we do get to see it because I think it would be a huge scandal. Obviously, left-wing media is not going to cover it, but it'll be all over the place everywhere else, and there'll be no denying it. Unfortunately, even if that happens, it is not going to stop anyone from voting for the next Democrat.
No, it won't. I would be curious, though, what the outcome would be if there is clear evidence that the auto pen was used without Joe Biden's knowledge. Who gave out some of these pardons would be an interesting one as well, and what the process would be to determine if those signatures are valid, given the name on the paper, that individual didn't know what was being signed with his signature. It would be a really interesting legal case that probably would have massive implications for the president.
Yeah, and what are the charges for anyone who did it without him knowing? I mean, is it just a forgery charge? Or I feel like it's got to be something more than just forgery.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I would imagine it would just be forgery charges, but you would get a charge for each time you did it. So you're not looking at one charge. You'd probably be looking at dozens for the people that did it.
It's got to be forgery and fraud. I mean, because technically you're signing someone else's name, so you're forging their signature, but you're also pretending to be the president, I think, kinda. You hear of a forgery charge and you automatically think you're forging someone else's signature on a check or something like that.
Well, yeah, and that would apply to government documents as well.
There's got to be some kind of like abuse of power or, something or other that goes in there other than just forgery.
It's an interesting question. We have to reach out to a lawyer and see what they think.
Well, Matt, next up, we got a little world news stuff before we round out the show. So President Trump has announced that he's shutting down the Venezuelan airspace. Tell us what exactly that means. What's going on with that?
Yeah, be prepared for more of the media to claim Donald Trump is starting a war. President Trump has announced that he is shutting down Venezuelan airspace amid a surge in drug trafficking from the nation. Trump posted to Truth Social, quote, "To all airlines, pilots, drug dealers, and human traffickers, please consider the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety." This comes just days after President Trump announced he would be bombing land-based drug trafficking targets. We have talked multiple times about this topic and about the campaign against the boats in open waters. Trump claims trafficking via the sea has dropped 85% since the bombing started. Trump has said he has spoken with Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro last week, and they discussed a possible meeting between the two. So there's a few different talking points we can go here. We'll start with the military side of this. The military side of this would be relatively easy. The weapons the Air Force and the Navy have are extremely accurate. So if they can identify the target, they will hit that target. The difficult part is the intelligence side and figuring out what to shoot at. I would personally want to see very targeted attacks with smaller munitions. We don't want to see carpet bombings. And it's absolutely important, in my opinion, that we look into these targets and determine if they're worth shooting at. These are expensive munitions we're using. So there should be a cost analysis to each shot taken. Is it worth the cost of the munition to take out specific targets? The next point is this worth doing? I like that we are doing something to slow down the flow of drugs, but as long as people in the U.S. are willing to spend their money on these drugs, the traffickers will continue to do it for the money. They will find new ways to get the product to the end customer for money. They don't care what the law says. I like that we're trying to slow the flow down, but we also need a campaign within the U.S. to really show the devastation these drugs can cause. I can remember as a kid, we had the Just Say No to Drugs campaign that was on TV quite regularly, and it was in schools. I don't know if they still have that in schools. I would hope so. But we could use some kind of campaign like that, even with adults. We've had campaigns to bring awareness to things that are important, and I would say this is important. Think of Smokey the Bear telling you that you can prevent forest fires. We could use something like that.
I got a couple of questions here. So my first question is, what exactly does it mean for us to shut down another country's airspace? How enforceable is that?
Yeah, shutting down essentially means creating a no-fly zone. It'll be interesting because normally when you have a no-fly zone, it gets tested. And for it to be a no-fly zone, you typically do have to shoot down other planes. It wouldn't be overly difficult. Venezuela is not a modern military. The Air Force they have would be child's play compared to our Air Force or our Navy. So the process would be fairly simple. You would want to take out any kind of air defenses the other country has. You'd start with the land-based air defenses and then move on to things like airplanes that try to respond. It would essentially create a space where no airplanes could fly, and that would include commercial jets. You could theoretically let commercial jets still fly and just prevent military aircraft, but you do run the risk of misidentification and shooting down a commercial airliner. That would be devastating publicly for any administration. Given the strength in military we have compared to them, this would be relatively easy.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question about commercial airliners. So are we telling them that no commercial airlines can fly in and out either? Nothing can be flying in their airspace?
That's what Trump seems to indicate. It's worth noting as well that anytime you have an armed conflict, Ukraine is a good example. There is no no-fly zone over Ukraine. Neither side can really enforce it. But commercial jets do not fly over Ukraine because of the risk that you will be misidentified or not identified at all and just shot at.
So you also mentioned that Trump and Maduro were talking about having a meeting between the two. What is Maduro's thoughts on this? What are the risks that come with declaring the airspace closed? And is this going to escalate tension between us and them?
I don't know what they could agree upon. Maduro is a relatively weak leader. He doesn't have a whole lot of options economically. So drug trafficking is something that makes money and helps. As far as the risks, There isn't really any risk in declaring it closed. The risk comes when you try to enforce it. Like I said, commercial airlines will most likely avoid the airspace, and it would be very interesting to see how the U.S. media would react if it came to us shooting down one of their military planes. I would imagine Trump would get hammered pretty hard by the media for starting a war, even though that's not what it would be.
So do you think that a scenario is inevitable where Trump is going to order us to start shooting at planes? Like, is somebody going to test this out to see if Trump's going to fire missiles at another plane?
This will absolutely get tested. There is no way, as the leader of a country, you can let another president tell you your airspace is closed. The Venezuelan economy is not strong, but closing down its airspace will hurt the economy. When the American fighter jets show up, Maduro is almost certainly going to test his resolve, and he will send up some fighter jets, at least to see what the response is.
So that's what I was going to ask next. Who exactly is going to test it out? Is this going to be a Venezuelan Air Force situation, or is this going to be one of the Venezuelan drug cartels or whatever, drug smugglers that are trying to send a plane up and, fly it somewhere to see if they can get out?
It would almost certainly be the military. The drug cartels are quite advanced, but fighter jets is something that they don't really have a lot of. They wouldn't have the sophistication to fly a plane with ammunition and hit a moving target in the air. So it would most likely be the military. Venezuela's Air Force does have some older Russian fighter jets, as well as a few really old F-16s, but those aren't much of a match anymore for what we would have in the airspace and the numbers advantage we would have.
Well, Matt, maybe on the next podcast, we will be talking about our Air Force shooting down some Venezuelan airplanes. Until that time, though, let's get to the end of the show here. We're going to do our blind ranking, as always, but this time, Matt has the list for me. So, Matt, what's the topic? And fire away.
Yes, we are doing historic political figures, specifically presidents. I'll give you the 5 names one at a time, and you rank them 1 to 5. Your first name will be George Washington.
George Washington. I mean, I feel like I have to go pretty high with George Washington. He is one of the original founders. He was the first president. So I'm going to go safe here and throw George Washington at 1.
Number 1, right off the bat.
I'm going to put him at 1. I feel like I can't go wrong from here.
Well, we'll see. Next up is Herbert Hoover. He would be your president during the Great Depression, although it wasn't all his fault, but he was quite ineffective at stopping it.
Well, given the Great Depression during that time, I feel like it could get worse. And you did say it wasn't all his fault. I'm going to put Hoover at 4.
Number 4, probably not bad. You'll probably like that. Your next name, Abraham Lincoln.
Honest Abe.
Big things were done for civil rights with Abe Lincoln. Founding member of the Republican Party as well.
True. I'm going to put Abe at 2.
2, okay.
Yeah, I feel like you can't go wrong with Washington and Lincoln at 1 and 2. They are the most recognizable presidents in U.S. history, in my opinion.
The next name is Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower, known very well for leadership during the Cold War and pretty strong economic performances from the country. Most notably, though, Eisenhower is the one that came up with the interstate highway system we have that's quite popular today.
So the question is, I have 3 and 5 left, right?
Yes.
So the question is, who is the last name? Because I'm afraid if I put Eisenhower at 5, you're going to give me like Joe Biden or something. Or you're going to give me like Bill Clinton.
An interesting fear.
As the last one. But then again, I could put Eisenhower at 3, and then you give me somebody better in the last spot. So I got to gamble here either way, I think.
What are you going with?
I'm going to put Eisenhower at 5.
5.
No, change my mind. 3. I'm going to put him at 3.
Oh, going 3. You'll be happy you did that.
Okay.
Number 5 for you, Jimmy Carter.
Okay. All right. Checks out.
Not a bad list. I would say you got it right. I debated throwing Trump and Biden in there, but it was a bit recent, so we'll let time determine how good of a president those two were. I'm going to guess Joe Biden will go down as the worst, but I wanted a bad name in there, so Jimmy Carter it was.
All in all, not too bad. Well, it's been a pretty good episode this far. So that wraps up episode 17 of the Republic Brothers podcast. Leave us a comment if there's anything you want to hear about on the next episode. Make sure to follow us on social media. Leave us a rating, subscribe, share this episode with a friend. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.